Okay, so as always, go nice and easy. Pace yourself. It's quite straightforward at home, isn't it, to do that, because you can just sit out at any point. Just standing for a few moments, reminding yourself of our basic posture. Feet should be hip width apart. Instead of shuffling around, and you could measure that from the outside of your foot, on each side, or from the middle, or from the inside. I prefer the latter myself. A lot depends on what's suitable for you. Just think of parallel lines, shoulders to hips to feet, and if you can imagine another line going down through the middle of your body. From the side, weight is a little bit forwards. I'm exaggerating now. And that should encourage a sense of just sitting back. And also from the side, if I get this pole, you should see that here, if I can get it right, when I go into the posture, I go forwards and I sit back, and you can see that there's that middle line, if you like, which creates a sort of like the axle of a wheel, and this is what we turn around, and it also provides an insight into the overall structure and what's supporting you. And I think just taking a few moments to realise that obviously your legs, feet are supporting your upper body, and your upper body, the phrase that we use is we sit into the legs. Your back is supporting the front of your upper body. And to an extent, there's also the, if you like, the exterior, or the outer edges of your body flowing inwards. So the general feeling is that there's a sort of flowing inwards and downwards. And the key part of that is always going to be feeling your centre of gravity dropping. If I were to give you a heavy box and say hold it up above your head and relax your shoulders, that would be quite difficult, and you'd also start to wobble around after a while. If the box were down there, the weight were lower, you'd be more stable, more likely to be able to release tightness and stiffness in your back. So if we can avoid carrying the weight in the upper part of the body, essentially, this is really exaggerated, we go from this to this. It can feel a bit strange because you can feel a little bit hunched over. We spent so much of our time being told, to shoulders back, chest out kind of thing. And then just begin to turn. So you're turning in the center of your body, the area between hips and waist. Trying to maintain that posture, and there are several qualities about it that we become familiar with. One of them, for me, that I think is really useful, is that as we settle into the posture, particularly in the upper body, we just develop more of a sense of space to move with. So one way of thinking of what we're doing is that we're creating movement, we're generating movement from the center of the body, and just seeing to what extent that movement fills up the space. Think of water filling up a hollow in the ground, rather than trying to force any movement. Arms are hanging down, feeling quite heavy. Don't sort of hold your arms out or try and place them anywhere. So very loose in your shoulders. And these are all things that we want to try and recognize, and we will build on them. Certainly, that there are ways of improving the flow and the feeling of the movement. There are things that we create shapes and patterns with our arms. But we don't want to lose this basic feeling of space, and we don't want to lose the sense that our arms are following what's happening in the body. So this first exercise is a useful warm-up, a physical warm-up. starting to get the blood and the energy flowing a bit more freely through your body. Warming the muscles up. Getting your heart beating a little bit faster, but very gently. It helps to get more oxygen to your brain and the rest of your body. But also at the same time, we're beginning to feel the effect of some of the basic principles of the posture. There's a rhythm to the movement as we go faster, and there's a rhythm to the slower movements that we make. But as a general thing, I think it's more difficult to pick out those slower rhythms. But it's one of the ways in which we connect. Our bodies will resonate to the rhythm, sort of the vibration of the rhythm. And so we both get a sense of how, when we say, for instance, moving our hips, it affects our shoulders and our arms, that sense of connection. But also the sense of the overall energy in the movement. And we begin to bring our attention more into our body. This is, I think, one of the key things that is quite distinctive about Tai Chi and Qigong. These are intentional movements. And for your intent to work for you, your attention has to be in this general area. And what we all find, I think, or most of us at least, pretty much everybody I know would agree with this, is that our attention drifts away very easily. We get caught up in a line of thought, some kind of planning or some kind of memory or story, and we're totally lost. This is completely normal, and so we learn to bring ourselves back through this attention to posture, the details of the posture, the details of the movement. So we can think of these as moving meditations in that sense. And so we've got these three elements of body, mind, movement or energy, however you care to label it, that start to interact and harmonize. And that act of harmonizing, or the outcome of that, is what I would refer to in this context as the qi. So we want all three elements to work together. And at times we may focus on one thing or another. You know, we may notice through the flow that it doesn't feel quite right. But then we realize that maybe our knees have locked or something like that, or that we just lost the attention, and through that we're no longer aware of the rhythm of the movement, etc., etc. So these three elements mutually support each other. Now, this change in the arms, we're going to make a shape with the arms. You turn your hands out, raise them up just a little, no higher than shoulder height, elbows hanging down. So we want to find a way of maintaining this posture, this shape in the arms without actually straining. So we don't want to be like this. So how far your arms are from your body, how high they are, is an influence here. But letting your elbows drop down and looking to try and just release tightness in your arms, shoulders, so that the big muscles of your arms feel quite soft after a while. And this helps to ensure that other parts of the body are engaging: tendon, ligament, skeletal muscle, fascia, so that eventually the whole body is working as one unit. And then just let your hands drop down. So these are the qualities that we want to try and build upon as we go through the different movements. Again, weight forwards, hips sitting back, I always try and do the movements bigger than I should do. So sometimes my posture goes out, but it means that you're able to see hopefully what's going on. So what you want to do is just let your hips drop back. This will start to work the muscles of your legs. And at a certain point, you'll feel yourself being pushed up. Try not to pull your belly in and try not to tighten up in your lower back, because as you go down, your pelvis will just quite naturally tuck under. You don't need to force that to happen. And that helps to keep you in line. If you watch what happens if, say, I pull my belly in and I sink my hips back, then I fairly quickly get pulled backwards because the pelvis is unable to move, or less likely to move. So just go down as far as you're comfortable. Don't go down, think, well, I've got to go down more, because you'll just end up straining your knees. You won't be able to sustain the posture. And then bring your attention to your shoulders and your arms. So as your hips come up, the fingers are pulled up, and as your hips drop down, your fingers are gently pressed down. Imagine you're doing this in water or some kind of thicker medium. So there's just a little bit of fluid resistance to the movement. And again, trying to feel this connection from feet to hips to shoulders, down into your fingers. Feel the rhythm of the movement. Your body expands and contracts. Your breathing just following that pattern in whatever way is comfortable. No particular special breathing pattern. Bring your hands around as though you're cradling the ball, and let the expansion push your elbows out. And that will bring your hands up. Turn your hands over as though they're now draped over the ball, sinking down, as though you're pushing the ball down into the water. There's two images there, both connected with water, which may or may not work. And of course, in Tai Chi, one of the ways that we make this connection between mind and body is through the use of imagery. Our bodies naturally respond to different images. It's a slow process, but it's one of the outcomes of this focused attention, and one of the key ways in which we begin to influence small changes in the body. Those small changes gradually build into bigger changes. But it's got to be the right image. Not all images will work for you. Some images may even distract you, and we want to try and avoid that. So make use of the images as appropriate. Now, this time, when you get down to the bottom, turn your hands out, pushing up and pressing down. When I talk about this integration of mind and body and energy, the implication shouldn't be that we're forcing the body into anything. It's not mind over matter. So, for instance, this is an exercise called the wild goose. Now, if the image of the bird in flight has any meaning for you, it could be just a sense of it's a nice sight, it could be more detailed than that. Then, if we practice this, that quality will start to infuse the movements that we make. If it doesn't mean anything to you, then just shelve the image. It may come to you at some point. No image is complete or universal, I think. But the wild goose. And then part in the clouds. Hands crossed in front of your belly. Push up again. Your elbows go out this time. Letting your fingers be drawn around in a nice smooth circle. So when the sun breaks through the clouds on a grey day, there tends to be a sort of expansive feeling. That's very akin to what we feel potentially in this exercise. It's not a stretch. So I'm going to here, you'll notice at the top of the movement, my elbows are still bent. I'm not trying to stretch out. So preserving that sense of spaciousness within the body. Expanding and contracting. Those of you more familiar with these movements, just check these details. It's very easy to lose them. But also, as you get more used to these things, there's a more intuitive sense. Quite often we feel that the movement isn't quite right for some reason. And then just in the act of recognizing that, sometimes our bodies will respond straight away. Sometimes they'll need a little bit more attention. It varies. One more time. Now, letting your hands drop down. And this time, push up, elbow first, drawing your fingers up, and your elbow drops. Maybe getting your hand above the head, you wind your arm around and pull down. This is called dragon plucks stars from the sky. Then on the opposite side, extending all the way through that side of your body, almost like you're going to pluck something off a tree, some kind of soft fruit. So when you curl your fingers around, leave a space inside them. And take your time with the changeover. Let your hand finish on one side, your attention move across from one side to another, and only then do you push up. So just aware that there are points where we may find ourselves rushing, getting down to here, and suddenly this hand is already twitching. Just remind yourself this isn't required. There's plenty of time. You don't have to learn everything at once. And so that sense of what I described as spaciousness in the body is also reflected in our thoughts and our attention, through the focus of our attention, and through the realization that we really don't need to hurry. There's a lovely phrase in the old writings associated with Tai Chi: we seek the stillness within the movement. And then do this one more time on each side. The hand come down, hips dropping down, and for the next couple of exercises, just maintain this posture with the hips dropping back slightly. We're not going up and down, but try not to lock your knees back. You can see as soon as I lock my knees back, I'm sort of being pushed forwards. So sitting into your hips, soften your knees, hands at your sides. So we'll do the first and the last of this set. So push up. This time your hands come up the maximum height, just above the height of your head, in front of your head, not pulling back, palms up, and then slowly down, your arms rotating quite naturally, coming back to your sides. You come up again, and this time your elbows drop and you're pushing out to the sides and back. Do that again, so expanding and contracting once again gives you the rhythm. Expanding. This time, you turn again in the center of your body, so that changes the direction that the arms, they're still pushing straight out from your shoulders. They haven't twisted around or gone forwards and back. Turn the other way. and back, and then facing forwards and pushing out. So we've got 4 directions called pushing in 4 directions. The directions governed by the center of your body. Although the first one is up, nice long feeling developing in your back. The middle 2 movements are the push out to the side with the turn in your center, expanding, contracting, same to the other side, expanding, contracting. It doesn't matter which way you turn first. And then the final one is facing forward and pushing out. And back. So again, taking your time, 1, trying to feel the movements, not just in your arms, or your legs, or your hips, but the changes in your back and in the front of your body with that expansion and contraction. Some parts of your body extending, others contracting. But again, trying to leave just a little bit of space at the end of the movement, as though you could have gone a little bit further, but chose not to. So pushing in 4 directions. Again, if the image of moving through water, although the air were a bit thicker around you, is useful. Try and keep that in mind. Do this one more time. Realize that you're training mind and body, and I suppose what we might regard as one of the intermediaries between the 2, which would be brain and nervous system. You know, activating certain areas of the brain, the nervous system, which we practice will become a smoother process for you. And then let your hands drop down. Push one hand out, draw the fingers back, let the hands swing up, in line with your shoulder, in line with your nose, I beg your pardon, and then down. So a sort of half circle around the outline of your body. So you feel the contrast between one side of your body and another. And then if it's comfortable, if it's not, just stay with this basic movement, but here, turning again, and then down. Just be careful of what's happening in hips and lower back in particular. This one, I find it's quite a strong movement. And then change sides. Notice again any difference between one side and another. You may find it's very common to find that you feel more able to move on one side. Expanding. And then again, if it's comfortable, add in a turn. Don't turn too far. So in none of these movements are we really trying to stretch. Some are a little bit stretchy, but trying not to go to the full stretch. Not because that's a bad thing, but because we focus our attention much more on the movement. This time, just let your hand drop all the way down and stand again. And shake out. Those last two movements showed, just as the faster movements we did, showed the significance of this part of the body between hips and waist, the center of the body. If the center line is like the axle of the wheel, then this is like the hub. So when we turn in the center, we turn the whole body basically, and we're mostly concerned with the upper body at the moment. So one of the reasons we take this stance here is to drop the center of gravity below our hips, to root down and to release that part of the body from the burden of having to strain to carry our weight. So going back to the focus of our attention, we increasingly focus our attention into the center and from there down into the legs. And this requires deliberate conscious effort because we're hardwired to think more about what's happening, to notice more, to respond more in our arms and our hands. And so to reset the balance, we make a distinct effort to bring our attention back to the center and so on. And so the center of the body in particular and its connection to the ground become representative of that quality of stillness. So if we practice this, then it means that we have if you like, a physical location to take our attention to take our thoughts to, when we feel we need that little glimpse of stillness. You know, it could be in moments of stress and tension. It could be when things are a bit noisy and a bit busy around you, and you just want to find that kind of stiller quality, only for a moment or two, but that's an important element. Also important to realize is that the influence of the center part of the body isn't just horizontal. This is what we've been doing so far mostly, but also vertical. So the pelvis can rotate in vertical plane. There's a circle there, a circle there. And you can see as I do that, that changes the alignment of the upper part of my body. Effectively, my hips go back. And because of that, my shoulders go forward. I'm not trying to lean forwards here. If I do this with the pole that I was talking about, and there's two ways of thinking of this. One is that if I do this, then my hips going back is effectively like somebody pushing on the end of the pole, and it does this, which means that rather than straining in my neck or my back to pull my head up, I'm actually just allowing, it's like a seesaw, push on one end and the other end comes up. The other thing to bear in mind, and again, particularly for people a bit more familiar with this perhaps, but maybe not, is that as I go forwards, I've still got this impression in my mind of the center line of the body. So I've got this to come back to. So those two things start to have an effect on our overall posture. And it's a way of being upright without straining, which again, I think is one of the most significant things, one of the most lovely things about the posture that we take, that we get this big openness in the front of the body. The exercise, we're going to do two exercises using that. Again, I will do them quite big, but be careful of your back here. Just go as far as you're comfortable. Sink down, and here the pelvis is more level because it's tucked under. You push up, and this time, as you sink down, you deliberately push your hips back. And at this lower part of the movement, just let the hips drop down and feel your head coming back up and push on. Again. Your arms will follow that movement. So this time, as you push up, let that push your hands out. Sorry, I'm going to go off screen if I'm not careful. And then Just let the arms extend out as far as you're comfortable. Try not to strain in the shoulders. This is called rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. So again, the image suggests water, and finding a way to move through water that doesn't increase the resistance. So it encourages both a stronger quality in the body, but also a softer quality. We've kind of mostly we know quite instinctively that when we're in water, if we stiffen up, it's going to become harder work. So it's a useful image if you can use it for both the flow, but also the development of this greater sense of a connection, a stronger quality beginning to develop within the body and within the movement. Rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. Do one more of these. And then sit back, let your hands come down in front of your hips, turn slightly, push your hips back, and that will send your hands forwards. Turn horizontally, and then let your hips drop down and come back to the upright position. Do the same thing in the opposite direction. This is called polishing the table. That image of housework doesn't appeal. Then imagine you've got a ball in front of a big ball, and what you're doing is you're rolling it around. Remember, hips go back. So the hips going back and then down are a key part of what helps us to remain stable in these arts. Again, please go nice and carefully in your back, gentle with your knees. It isn't necessarily the case that we place a higher value on big movements than small movements in Tai Chi. One more in each direction. Good. And then just let your hands drop. A couple of slow, gentle. Give your legs a little shake out. Good. So going back to how far we want to be trying to move, there's a couple of things to bear in mind. When we did Dragon Plucks the Stars from the Sky, I went to here. And not just because my hand would disappear if I went any further. If I go to the full length, I'm now straining. If I wanted to stretch this might be a useful thing to do. But what I want to do is to feel that here, there's still that sense of a circulation of blood, the circulation of energy through the body. So we say sometimes that we go to 80% of the full movement. We want to gradually let that 80% increase. We should never go to the full movement. But I mentioned earlier that water filling up a hollow in the ground. If that kept happening, the water would erode and dissolve the hollow, and it would gradually get bigger. Or if it's running down the hill, it will gradually carve out the channel. So it's not that we're not concerned with increasing the range of our movement in Tai Chi. It's a question of how we do that. Once again, I would emphasize this is not an argument against stretching at all, but the emphasis is on movement. The other thing to think about is, I mentioned earlier that when we bring our intent to a part of the body, or through an image to the body, we can influence small changes in the body. It's like if you were watching a film about Arctic exploration, and even if you were in quite a warm place, you might get goose pimples because you would feel the cold. And there's many small changes like that can take place in the body, and they're like the building blocks, the bricks and mortar of the bigger movement. So we influence the bigger movements through the agency of the smaller movements. And so and I say that when we do something like, say, for instance, rowing a boat in the middle of the lake, if I feel that I want my arms to go out further or my back to go out further, I imagine it as a gentle growth out of my hips, out of my shoulders, almost cell by cell, rather than thinking, well, I'm just going to stretch out like this. And this is always the approach that we would take in Tai Chi. So you need a certain amount of patience. You're not going to get sort of overnight results in terms of things like the range of your movements and so on. But it's where, again, body, mind, energy really start to interact with each other and support each other and influence each other. We're going to change the stance. So we want to maintain the hip width of our step. If your feet are close together, I mean, it is possible to root down, and there are exercises where we do this, but you know, the whole thing becomes a bit kind of wobbly at this point. Whereas in a wider stance, I've got more stability. So now I'm going to turn one foot out and step forwards with the other foot and maintain the width of that step. And the length of that step will be about the same. So from the side, you can see, and my feet are closer together. I haven't taken a huge stride, but nor have I taken too short a step. Once again, letting your hips drop, and then just transferring your weight from one foot to another. You go forwards, try not to let your knee overextend, and you settle in the front leg. You go back, and you settle in the back leg. Once again, it's not just forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards. There's this little moment of settling. When you go back, you get to about 70% of the weight in the back foot. When you go forwards, no more than 60 to begin with. And that settling quality again relates to this stiller quality. Ideally, I guess we would maintain it the whole time, but in practice, we often lose it. So it's only for a split second eventually, but you can make it longer, and you're just aware of your posture. Do I have the alignment of my posture? And it's a downward movement. It's not stopping the movement. And I sometimes describe those little moments in all the movements as being like a comma in a sentence, a punctuation mark that doesn't stop the sentence, doesn't stop the flow of the sentence, but just breaks it up a little bit. So what I want to do, say, on the back leg is to be here. I don't want to do this or anything like that. Once again, I'll show you with the pole. Here, try and get it right. You can see it's moving with me. So I'm moving from the ground, trying to avoid lurching forwards like this. We're not going for speed or power. We're just trying to see if we can maintain the alignment of our body in movement. So the movement is initiated from the leg. You sink down and you push back, and people more experienced really feel that sinking down and wait for the moment when it's going to push you and direct the push forwards. There's a very good chance that all of us will, at least some of the time, lose the posture, lose the sense of being rooted, the dropping of our center of gravity in the transition from one foot to another. So one of the things that we learn to do is, again, in that comma, in that moment of settling, we become increasingly aware of posture, and we're able to make small adjustments, and quite often that becomes quite intuitive. I guess ideally you could say we shouldn't lose that posture at all, but in practice, of course, we do all the time. One way of imagining this might be, again, if you imagine a big ball and you're sitting on the ball and just rolling forwards and backwards. There's a sort of bouncy quality starts to develop in your legs as a result. Now, bring your weight back and just flex the front foot. More of your weight will go into your back foot. Just be careful of your knee. Go forwards. You can have your front foot turned out here. Settle into the front foot, then push the back knee forward so the heel comes up, and again more of the weight goes forwards and backwards. You want your weight to drop down through your foot into the ground. So we do this slowly and carefully in increments. Recognize that both the raising of your toes and your heel are strongly connected with the sense of dropping in your hips. So trying to avoid this syndrome, which will pull you forwards. So we maintain our alignment, we maintain our root, we maintain our stability as we do this, and gradually more of the weight goes into each leg. And then at a certain point, we're able to just bring the foot in. You step out, put your heel down first, lower your toes, and move the weight in. Raise the heel, contract your leg, push out this time. It's going to be the ball of the foot goes down, then your heel, and then move your weight back. So your foot sinking into the floor, center of gravity dropping, maintaining the alignment of your body. So this is not an exercise in balancing, because actually we don't need to balance because we're stable. Low center of gravity, soft in your hips, soft in your shoulders, which is a little bit counterintuitive to begin with. So what I would say to people is this is worth doing however long you've been doing this. Sometimes I've just got my fingers lightly on the wall here, get the stance right, because actually with the wall there, you've got a little bit of security, and we're more able to release, sink down. I generally don't have a problem with stability, but sometimes when I'm doing that with the wall or with a bit of support, I notice, oh, I'm still holding on in some places, and so on and so forth. Shake out. That's a very important exercise, that one. The transfer of the weight is one of the key things in Tai Chi that produces the different patterns of movements. The saying is the movement is rooted in the feet with this dropping of the center of gravity and the loading of the legs. Transmitted through the legs to the upper body, directed, shaped, governed, if you like, by the center of the body, and I've already talked about that, and finally expressed in our arms and our hands. So try that with the other foot forward, start in the parallel stance, step forwards, toes pointing forwards, and just fixed step. You're not raising your toes, you're not raising your heel. Take your time. Just feeling the basic transfer of your weight and feeling the effect of that in the upper part of your body. There's movements taking place there as the movement, the energy from the ground transmits to the upper part of the body. I've been doing this exercise since 1983, 40 years. And for me, it's still an essential part of the practice. For people who are interested in stability, in mobility, if you come to Tai Chi because you're having problems in that area, or you just don't want to have problems in that area, this is a really key exercise, because it teaches us how to move from that sort of, if you like, static posture, rooted down and so on and so forth, into a more mobile posture. And it also teaches us how to deal with the issues that arise when we move out of our center. And that's not just physically, but mentally as well. And the key is in the Chinese term sung, which we would interpret as releasing, as softening, relaxing, letting go, qualities of elasticity and and suppleness. So if I go back and I'm a bit wobbly, I can do all this and maybe that will help. Or if I can just release, then I can drop my center of gravity down again. Okay, if you struggle with things like that, use some support, start to feel how it's working within your own body. And this is important, that we actually experience these things. What we've experienced, we're more likely to be able to return to. Just raising your toes and your heel. Remember, hips dropping down. Or feeling of your hips dropping down. You may or may not bend your knees. It doesn't matter. It's a sense of what's happening within the body. We're lining ourselves up with the pull of gravity, this huge force that acts in us all our lives. And rather than trying to stiffen up to strain against it, we're allowing it to move through us and as it pulls our hips down to actually help us. In much the same way, if you sail a boat, you would angle the sails to the wind, the boat to the currents, and so on and so forth. So the things that might capsize you would actually help you to move along. And the sails, of course, whilst they're held out quite tight, they're never stiff, never hard. They do give a little bit. So it's not a bad image. Begin to step in. Take your time. Don't rush this. Don't get here and think, I'm going to take a step. Go forwards, settle. Remember that punctuation mark, and then bring the foot in. So again, slowing down your thoughts, bringing your thoughts into your body, into what you're doing right now, rather than thinking, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. Just focus on what you're actually doing and those key elements of rooting down and alignment. And then this time you bring your foot in, and where you've got space, but if you've got space forward, foot goes out and then out to the side to keep the width. Heel goes down, toes go down. You could do it backwards, go forwards, push the back knee in, raise the back heel, bring the foot in, and curve through. Just taking a few steps very carefully, planting your foot is the term that we use. So be aware of what your foot is doing. And then change direction. Again, this is a very, very key practice. We rarely give ourselves time and space to really pay attention to what's happening as we walk. What happens to the body when the leg extends, when it comes in? Do we feel a slight juddering? Can we release and sink down a bit more to counter that? And shake out. So both those exercises, the transfer of the weight and the walking that comes out of that, I would say are key exercises. They're also very good because they require a really close focus of attention. And so, it can be very difficult to calm down if you're feeling agitated, which we all do at times. Actually, the worst thing somebody can say to you is just calm down. It's always very annoying for me when that happens. But this really encourages a sense of your thoughts once again settling for a moment or two in your body. Now, go back to having one foot forward. Have your right foot forward so you can mirror my movement. Bringing our arms into the equation means that it's a bit tricky. We can lose a sense of what's happening in the feet and legs. Move your weight forwards and let your arms follow and just swing through a little bit, not too high, and back. It's this fisherman caster net. So again, you see how the arms follow and follow. They only really swing past my hips and shoulders at the end of each movement as I'm settling in. Again, you can imagine doing this in water. Again, particularly people more familiar with these exercises, what's happening in chest, belly, sides, in your back, between the shoulder blades, and so on. What are the movements that are going to be most useful, most helpful to you as you begin to develop this exercise? And if you wanted to sort of like improve the movement, where would you want to put the focus of your attention? Where would you want your intent to be? Fisherman castanet. So your fingers are swinging in a very gentle arc. So at this point, we're going to use that, come forwards, and then as you go back, turn a little bit, let the hands follow, and they swing up a little bit more, no higher than shoulder height, and not too far extended. Go forwards, let the hands circle downwards, turn so you bring your hands across the front hip and they swing up, and then you go back. You could count this in 4 stages. 1, you turn. 2, your weight goes forwards. 3, you turn. 4, your weight goes back. So an awareness of where your weight is crucial here. And what can often happen is the hands start doing this and the weight gets stuck and we lose the fluidity of the movement that way. Move the weight, the combination of the weight change and the turn in your center, move your arms for you. It's like a kind of sideways figure of 8, isn't it? Some people like to think of an infinity sign. Good, and shake hand. Okay, so let's do those on the other side. So this time have your left foot forwards. Start with fisherman casting. You're aware of the weight of your arms as they hang from the shoulders again. The hips move your shoulders. The shoulders move your elbows. Your elbows move your wrists. The wrists move your fingers. Like a wave flowing through your body. Through your back, out through the front of your body, through your shoulders. Be smooth and gentle. And then this time as you go back, turn. And don't overextend your arms. Don't lock your shoulders or your elbows out. Remember what I was saying earlier about the range of the movement. And this time, as you turn, your arms swing out, bring the other foot in, step and forwards. And again, and you foot in, step first, and then move your weight and turn. And then going back. And your legs and hands. Now, rubbing your hands together. And the pads of your fingers just lightly tap over your face. And then go up over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder and your arm. The other side. And your back. Lightly on your back. Working down towards your hips, going around your hips. And then your legs step down the outside of your legs, up the inside. And belly. And finally, the upper part of your chest. So I've talked about this idea of coming back, both mentally and physically, releasing, sinking, drawing your attention in. One of the most difficult things of all, I think, but actually one of the most valuable things that Tai Chi has given me, I think, over the years. And this last exercise that we close with is Embrace Tiger, Return to the Mountain. For me, the mountain encapsulates a lot of these ideas of strength, stillness, quietness, of that sense of just being able to look out and so on and so forth. So the tiger represents just everyday life, really, that throws us around sometimes and for all sorts of good and bad reasons, doesn't matter which. So sink down, push up, and your arms come out again. At the top of the movement, they come around as though you're holding the ball against your chest. Elbows drop, bringing your hands in, turn them palm down and press the ball down. And just see what it is that brings you back to the mountain. Could be the image of the mountain or the feeling of just settling, sensations in your body, maybe more of a focus of attention on your center, your hips, sinking, your feet. It's a very personal thing. But what are the things, or just one or two things that, next time you're feeling agitated or a bit stiff or a bit restless, maybe standing in the queue at the supermarket or whatever, in the line of traffic when you're in a hurry to get home, what is it that would be most useful to you to remember? To just give you that little bit of space in both mind and body. Embrace tiger, return to mountain. And a couple of slow, gentle breaths. And shake. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for watching and joining in.